Dr. West discusses how anthropology is the study of all humans in all times, in all places, and, and over the course of the semester, we've covered a variety of concepts and learned a little bit about the life in many different cultures. Though this is an introduction to anthropology class, it teaches so much more than that. It provides a framework for a different way of thinking about yourself and the world around you. Overall, by appreciating the similarities and differences among individuals and cultures across space and time, one learns how to think outside the box and ask productive questions about the world. The thesis statement and major concept of this presentation was forged from the general education learning outcomes for this course. This is explored by seeing other sides of the story, understanding the art of seeing the change over time, and seeing poverty and gender through an anthropological lens. Additionally, a professional application for school counseling is presented, addressing why it's important to appreciate similarities and differences while answering the questions, who am I, what am I going to do, and am I going to make it? In the first few weeks of class, a TED Talk video was assigned called The Danger of a Single Story, a speech by the novelist Chimamanda Adichie. In this, she presents how dangerous just hearing one story of a person or culture can be. When you are only ever told one story, that is what you believe to be true. However, when we believe something about a person or culture based only on one single story, we fail them. There are so many other stories and perspectives which tell a more accurate tale if we care to listen. Anthropologists seek out the other sides of the stories that are told of people all around the world in hopes to bring greater appreciation of their way of life. Adichie discusses a single story where one of her professors did not approve of her writing because they said it was not authentically African, even though she is a woman who was born and raised there her entire life. She later came to understand that he had said this because he had only ever been told or had heard a single story of life in Africa, and what he believed to be true was an incomplete view. Every stereotype we've heard or have had said about us is only a single story and not sufficient in highlighting the full person. Miss Adichie says, stories have been used to dispossess and to malign, but stories can also be used to empower and to humanize. Stories can break the dignity of people, but stories can also repair that broken dignity. This video made me realize how often I listen to and believe only a single story of strangers, other cultures, and even the people closest to me. I was able to practice seeing other sides and listening to other stories throughout this course, and this video was instrumental in the shift I experienced from a closed-minded experience in this class. The art of seeing reading opens by saying, you can respond to human differences with hate or ignorance, or you can choose to open up to them and ask questions you have never considered before. This connects with what Adichie addresses in The Danger of a Single Story, in that when we hear only one side of a story, we should ask questions and open up to what is different than us instead of adapting an ill-fitting view of the person or culture. The art of seeing introduces how to do this by seeing our own seeing the big, the small, and seeing it all. We can see our own seeing, that is, seeing how we perceive the world and recognize the parts we take for granted. We have to see big to the larger cultural, social, and economic forces that are at play in everyday lives. We have to see small to understand why the smallest details have large significance and see it all from a holistic point of view, knowing that everything interacts. The Anthropology Toolkit contains 3 important aspects when mastering the art of seeing: communication, empathy, and thoughtfulness. These 3 all work together to enhance the other. The better we become at communicating, the more we can empathize with others, and then our thoughtfulness will expand. When we gain more knowledge, we can communicate better, and so on. The challenge associated with the art of seeing reading was the fieldwork of the familiar, in which we examine Nasarima, or America, from the lens of an outsider. This challenge was very impactful because it revealed how easily it is to get lost in what we see every day and not recognize the things that are inherent to our culture that we take for granted or that are harmful. Dr. West discusses that through the art of seeing, we can come to know many benefits such as building and maintaining better relationships, but one will also discover a greater ability to learn and will never be bored because they will see the strange in the familiar and the familiar in the strange. In the process of seeing other sides and mastering the art of seeing, it's important to realize how humans have evolved over time to be able to do this. Dr. Wesch, in his evolution reading, discusses how we came down from the trees because we were asking questions, making connections, and trying new things. We came down from the trees because we had to if we wanted to survive. Dr. Wesch explains how monkeys in the jungle will sing and alert each other when a leopard or predator is near because they usually attack by ambush. When we came down from the trees, we sang and communicated in a similar way the monkeys do to take away the element of surprise from predators, but also to be able to soothe, to praise, and to get attention. Dr. Wesch says, singing, collaborating, and walking on two legs would set off a cascade of changes that would make us who we are today. We did not come to ask these questions about ourselves and about other cultures in one night. It was a process that took over 20 million years. Dr. Wesch shows how running is an evolutionary adaptation and quotes Chris McDougall, who said we were born to run. We are not the fastest on land, but we are able to sweat and to store fat, which can explain why our ancestors could run over 100 miles easily to hunt animals before they had the tools to do so. In short, the way we are today is because of the changes that have occurred over long periods of time. It's important to realize how much these three factors are still in our culture today. Anything we learn is because we asked questions, made connections, and tried new things to start the changes, but change is continuing to happen every day. The changes that have occurred in the last 12,000 years are substantial. In The Tragedy of Our Times reading, Dr. Wesch discusses how Frances Moore Lapp answered Gandhi's question, why are some countries so rich and others so poor? She concluded that some countries are labeled as first world and some as third world, but they are not separate worlds at all. They've actually been interconnected for over 500 years, so that the poverty and struggle of one country is needed for the other to be successful. The challenge that went along with this assignment asked us to trace all the hands who helped in supplying us with just one of our material possessions. However, it's a very difficult task as, though we have more technology, social media, and texting abilities than ever, we are more disconnected from the people on the other sides of these than ever. This is the tragedy of our times. We are more connected than ever, yet act and feel more disconnected than ever. It's important to recognize this disconnect, so instead of further being a part of the problem, maybe instead we can be a part of the solution and change. It's also important to recognize the disconnect in understanding of gender differences. In the video, The Land Where Women Rule, the women in the culture are the head of the household in society. It makes one question how much influence the perception of gender has on a culture, and especially in our culture. Their way of life is different than what we are used to, but that is what's right for them. Their culture benefits both the males and females, and most cultures would say theirs does the same. However, this doesn't mean there aren't any issues in the understanding of gender differences. How one views gender, how a society views gender, trickles down into every institution in place. Beliefs about gender have changed tremendously over time, mostly to become more inclusive of people of all genders, but changes are still needed to bring about greater awareness and appreciation for all differences. After graduation, I plan on pursuing a master's degree in school counseling, and I feel as if this class has helped prepare me for this tremendously. In counseling, I know I will encounter situations, people, and families who are different than mine, and using an anthropological lens will assist me in being a better professional and human. As a counselor, I will appreciate the similarities and differences among individuals across space and time. I will think outside the box and ask productive questions about my students. I will need to be able to listen to and understand their perspectives, and I will need to be creative when assisting them with problems from the past or in the future. I will need to be able to ask questions to better understand these situations. However, it's also imperative that my students are encouraged to think outside the box too, and are thinking about meaningful questions for themselves and the world. Every student should be required to take this course because it teaches you how to appreciate what is different and provides a platform that fosters growth if you have an open mind. I have greatly benefited from this class and understand why it's important to learn about individuals whose lives differ from mine. I firmly believe that every student deserves a chance to succeed, regardless of their background, their beliefs, their ideas, their identification, whatever. Every student should be allowed to feel good about the things that make them different because our differences are what make us beautiful. If you want to learn about someone's differences, ask them questions and think outside the box. You may find you're actually very similar.